Welcome to the Sustainable Business Council's Sustainability Shot. This is the first one in our series this year. We'll have another one in January and another one in April on other topics. I'm Susan Anderson. I'm the Administrative Coordinator for the Sustainable Business Council, and we're really excited you're here with us for our event this evening. Should be great. I'd like to introduce the board members that we have here tonight, just so you can ask them questions if you want. We have Carolyn Sims is sitting on the bar stool. Brandy Strollers is our board chair. And we have Liz Dye behind the bar, and Heather Phillips behind the bar also. Heather and I, for whatever reason, whenever I look at her, I can't remember her name. She's been on the board for 2 or 3 years now. That was the pause there. I apologize. I don't think I have any board members in the audience. So we have a committee member, Beth Schenk, sitting in the middle. So she's part of the committee that puts this particular event on. Harry and it looks like Jessica's already gone. We had 2 interns helping us here tonight. We really want to thank them for their help and support. We couldn't do what we do without a lot of volunteer help. So if you didn't take our services survey, please do that before you go as well. Those of you watching, there will be an online version of that comes out next week. We'd like to know how we're doing on what we're doing and what you want to have us doing in the future. That was a very confusing sentence. Okay. We'd like to thank our SHOT sponsors. Family Dental Group in the mall is one of the big sponsors for this event. The Cherry Creek Radio and the Missoula Independent, Portico Real Estate, and Energetics all provide funding to help us give you the lovely food and this facility, etc. The facility is the Loft, and very nice facility that, again, they also are providing us here. Paddy Creek Market provided the food. Big Sky Brewing provided us with the beer. A number of local vintners provide us with wine tonight. And MCAT is filming for us. And we'd like to thank all the folks that help us out with our various events. If you'd like to learn more about our activities, there is a calendar of events over here. For those of you watching online, you can go to www.sustainablebusinesscouncil.org, and we have a listing of all our activities for this year up there. So now it's time to turn to our sustainability shot, the dirt on cleaning products. We know you all came to hear the nitty-gritty. Our speaker tonight is Cassidy Randall from Women's Voices for the Earth. Cassidy oversees Weave's market-based campaigns and coordinates efforts to mobilize and engage women in Weave's work. She developed the Detox Your Home Kit, Disinfectants Horror Show, and engagement tools that Weave uses, including their green cleaning parties. And she's worked or volunteered with a variety of other organizations, including the Surfrider Foundation and Students for Economic and Social Justice at UM, Montana Conservation Voters, Community Action for Justice in the Americas, Fair Trade City, Missoula, and a number of others. We're getting into some Spanish, and I took over Spanish, so I'm going to stop. She is also the author of Fighting for the Dream, Voices for the New Generation of Maya Women. So here's our speaker tonight, Cassidy.
Oh, thank you. That's right. Watch me screw up this one piece. So technology is just kicking my booty lately, so I have no doubt that I'm going to screw up this 2-button remote. So if I do, bear with me. Awesome. Okay. So just a little bit about Women's Voices for the Earth to start. We're a national organization, but we're based here in Missoula. And it's really great to be able to get to work on the ground in Missoula because we don't get to do that very often. So thanks so much to SBC for inviting us. I first want to start by asking a question. And Beth, you're exempt from answering all of these questions because you already know the answer. How many chemicals do you think are out there on the consumer marketplace today? You can shout out answers. This isn't like school. 50 billion, millions. So the tens of thousands is pretty accurate. There are about, we think, 82,000 chemicals in use on the consumer marketplace. Not all of those are toxic. Obviously, there are lots of chemicals out there that are very safe. Unfortunately, a lot of them are toxic. How many of that 80,000 plus do you think have been adequately tested by the Environmental Protection Agency, by the EPA?
10.
It's not bad. Anybody else?
100, 150, 200. Yeah.
You guys are way too smart. This is not nearly as fun for me as it usually is. So 200 have basically been tested by the EPA for health and safety standards. How many of those 200, do you guys feel like you're in school yet? How many of those 200 do you think the EPA has actually banned or restricted?
10.
5, whoever said 5. 5 of them. Asbestos, not one of the 5. Didn't make the cut, which is unbelievable, right? Sort of shows why our system is broken. One more question, then you guys will get into this, don't worry. You'll stop being participatory and you can relax and listen. How many of those, in contrast, do you think the EU has banned or restricted?
About 75.
Thousands. They've restricted more than 1,500 now, or banned them outright. So that's sort of what we're working with as a landscape here when we're talking about toxic chemicals in the US. And so from our mission, you can see, I just want to tell you all a little bit about Women's Voices for the Earth to give us a little credibility in the rest of my talk here, so bear with me while I go through some of this groundwork. So we come at this problem from 3 different approaches that you can see from our mission, and one of those is that we educate people about toxic chemicals and how to reduce their exposure, and we do that through reports that are easy to read and fact sheets and fun resources like all those that were mentioned, our videos and our green cleaning party kits and things that make toxic chemicals not seem so horrifying, right? That actually make it seem like it's something that you can sort of control in your life, because that's really important. It can be really overwhelming when we're talking about numbers like 80,000 chemicals and what are these chemicals, and you get scary names in there. So that's one thing we do. And the second thing we do is we work with companies to actually reformulate their products, because that can be a really fast route of getting safe products on the market. And the reason we do that, we do highlight companies that are doing good things like 7th generations of the world, but not everybody can afford a 7th generation product, right? And so, for example, right now we're running a campaign against Procter & Gamble to take a cancer-causing chemical out of Tide. And we get, a lot of our members are frequently, they're already green to begin with. And they're like, well, we don't buy Tide, it doesn't matter. And for them, that's great. I mean, awesome that they can afford, or they're well enough informed that they're not buying it. But what about all those women out there who are buying Tide Free and Gentle because Procter & Gamble says it's a safer choice for their kids? So that's the other reason that we work with companies to reformulate products. And the third thing we do is work on government policies to actually require that we're testing chemicals for safety before we put them in products that we use every day. That seems like a no-brainer, but just isn't happening right now. So we come at it from these 3 angles because we really think that that is a systemic change. That way we're actually changing the systems that are allowing toxic chemicals in the marketplace. And so we're not just saying, hey, buy this product instead. We're saying everybody should get access to safe products, and they should just be safe to begin with, because it's your right to not worry about toxic chemicals in your shampoo and your deodorant and your cleaning product and your Teflon and your aluminum can that I just found out today. Thanks, Beth. And I just want to briefly actually touch on this. I know that a lot of you in here are not women, but you probably have women in your life that you love. So I'm going to plug it. And it's a really, really important issue when we're talking about toxic chemicals, especially when we're talking about institutional cleaning as well. We'll get into why women are more affected by this, and they're likely to be doing a lot more of the cleaning as well. So this is very important. And I hate reading off the slides, so just a sec. So why do we focus on toxic chemicals as a women's issue? And we'll get into cleaning products as well. But one, Weave believes that women really have a ton of social power, right? We tend to make decisions. Studies show that we make decisions as a group, and we make changes as a group. And so that's power in numbers, and that leads to a movement of people. We have huge political power. Women, regardless of political party, we rate toxic chemicals in the environment as one of our top concerns. Democrat, Republican, Independent, one of our top concerns. We have tremendous economic power. And I bet any of you in here will attest to this, that women in the average household make 85% of consumer decisions. 85%, that is massive, massive amount of consumer power, and companies listen to that. I mean, when, I can give an example later on, but when some women stop buying Tide, for example, they're going to start paying attention and they're going to reformulate that product to make it safer, because that's 85% of their consumer market. So huge, huge amount of voting with your dollars. We obviously are underrepresented in political and environmental decision making, historically and currently, and that's why we've provided these opportunities for women to really raise their voices on issues that matter to them in the political arena and in the corporate arena. Women are more impacted by toxic chemicals. So you're back in school, here's another question. Think about personal care products, for example. And personal care products are anything you put on your skin, from deodorant to sunscreen to aftershave to toothpaste to chapstick, anything. So just think in your head about how many you've used today. And does any man in the room want to share how many that you used today? Yeah.
2.
2? What did you use?
Deodorant and shave cream.
Perfect. Toothpaste, maybe?
Oh, that was last night.
I appreciate your honesty. Perfect. Okay, so 2. Anybody else? Any other men? Yeah.
I've used about 7 today.
7. Do you remember what?
Shampoo, toothpaste, soap, deodorant, laundry detergent, dishwashing stuff,
Yeah.
and hand sanitizer.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so 7. Yeah, that's about right. Any woman want to share how many? And if nobody will, I mean, I will, and don't worry, I'll shame all of you. Trust me. All right, well, I'm gonna go. So I used, you guys ready for this? I used moisturizer and toothpaste and chapstick and deodorant. I used a cover-up, I used mascara, I used eyeliner. What is that? That's 9. And then I'm sure that when I go home, I'm going to use shampoo and conditioner and a different kind of lotion for my body, and I'm going to use a leave-in conditioner. And then I might use, I don't know, some sort of different moisturizer for my face. This is normal for women. So what's normal for men is probably about 5 personal care products a day, 5 to 7. What's normal for women is 9 to 15. And so we're greater users of personal care products, and a lot of those chemicals can be very toxic, and just through those we're exposing ourselves to a mixture of toxic chemicals. So that's one example of why women are more impacted. This other reason is sort of a depressing stat, but although gender roles have changed over time, women are still doing more than 70% of housework in the average home, studies are showing. So that means we're more exposed to chemicals in cleaning products, like laundry detergent, like dishwashing, like all-purpose cleaners, anything you can think of. Biologically, chemicals tend to build up in fat, especially chemicals that we're concerned about, and women just unfortunately have a higher level of fat tissue than men do. Also biologically, this one's pretty obvious, but women can pass toxic chemicals on to the next generation through the womb and through breastfeeding. And a recent study came out by our partners at the Environmental Working Group that found more than 200 synthetic, which means man-made, chemicals in the cord blood of infants already, 200 of them. And studies have also shown that if the average woman's breast milk were bottled for sale, that it wouldn't pass FDA regulations because it would be so contaminated. And of course, that means that, we always say breastfeeding is still the best way to build infant immunity, but that burden of toxic chemicals on the child is just unnecessary. And then this really scary slide about women's health problems being on the rise. This is also why we're focusing on this, and why everything that we're going to talk about after this is so important. And this first stat is always the one that is just mind-boggling, that this is just in the last 2 decades that breast cancer rates have risen to an average of 1 in 8. 1 in 8. It's probably higher than that now because this study came out 3 years ago from the Breast Cancer Fund. And doctors and scientists have linked this rise in breast cancer to the prolific use of synthetic chemicals on the marketplace, this increasing use of synthetic chemicals. And I mean, the spike in only 20 years is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I have a feeling that there are very few people in this room who don't know somebody who's been affected by breast cancer. Girls are reaching puberty earlier. This is really scary that girls are menstruating 2 to 4 months earlier, but they're growing breasts 1 to 2 years earlier. Can you imagine that if you were a little girl and you are growing breasts and the rest of your friends aren't? I mean, that's horrifying. Endometriosis is the leading cause of female infertility, far more common today than it was 50 years ago. Doctors and scientists also link that to toxic chemical exposure and the increasing use of synthetic chemicals. I put these last two stats on here. You know, unfortunately, they're not as important in Missoula, but women of color are more impacted even by toxic chemicals than white women are. And these are just two stats that show that. And that's for a number of reasons that we can talk about too if anybody has any questions about that. Okay, so now let's get into it. You guys are so tired of me just talking about women, geez. Everybody else just tuned out. So, and of course this is a woman's exposure. It's designed to reduce everyone's exposure. I should have changed that. So we launched our Safe Cleaning Products Initiative in 2007 with the release of a report called Household Hazards. And that was the first report of its kind to link undisclosed toxic chemicals in cleaning products to severe impacts to human health. And there are a couple of reasons why we launched this initiative. One, there's no law that requires cleaning product companies to actually disclose the ingredients they're using in their cleaners. So that means you can't, the way that you pick up your favorite shampoo in the store or your favorite food, for example, your favorite crackers, and look at the ingredients to see what you might want to avoid, you can't do that with your favorite cleaning product. And what that basically means is that companies are allowed to keep toxic chemicals a secret from you, which is really pretty scary. The second reason is that we know that there are toxic chemicals in cleaning products because companies do have to list certain hazardous ingredients on what are called material safety data sheets, which maybe some of you have heard of. So that's how we got enough information to actually release Household Hazards, was we went through those and said, what are some of these toxic chemicals? So we know that there are chemicals in there linked to cancer, to hormone disruption, to asthma and other breathing and respiratory problems, to reproductive harm like fertility problems and low birth weight. So we know this. And the two are just so linked between disclosure and toxic chemicals, and we'll get into that. Okay, so when we're talking about both the home and the workplace now, so let's get a little more into the workplace. We've got a lot of women stats here. The cleaning industry employing nearly 2.8 million janitors. Janitors and custodians actually are mainly made up of men. The vast majority are men. So we're talking about both genders here. And we're also talking about the occupants of the building, because you spray a cleaning product and it doesn't just go away, right? So chemicals in cleaning products, and actually chemicals from a lot of things, settle in dust. And so one of our top tips, you guys are going to hate this, but one of our top tips is always dust. And dust was something that's not just going to spread it around, but something that's going to pick it up like a microfiber cloth. Because dust is our top exposure to toxic chemicals. Isn't that wild? So cleaning chemicals will settle in the dust of the building, and of course that residue will also stay on a surface after it's been cleaned. So building occupants, of course, are also being exposed to toxic chemicals in cleaners. Is there anything else I wanted to say about that? I'm not even following my notes at this point. I'm getting so fired up. Nope, that's it. All right. And here are just some concrete stats to back up that we are seeing health problems in workers from cleaning product chemicals. Asthma, occupational asthma is a big one. There are a lot of chemicals in cleaning products that aren't just asthmagens, that they trigger an asthma attack, but they actually induce occupational asthma. So somebody who didn't have asthma before will develop asthma as a result of being exposed to these chemicals. 6% job-related injury, that's actually fairly large. This one, the 1 in 3 workers claims to have allergies. I actually would not be surprised if that was higher. Allergens in cleaning products, and actually a lot of different fragrances, allergens tend to be a fragrance ingredient. And there's a list of 26 known allergens, and not everybody is actually allergic to these chemicals. That's why they're called allergens. Only some people are allergic to them. But again, if you are exposed to them over and over and over and over, we have seen some studies showing that it's possible to develop allergies to these. And again, we're not saying, of course, that some of these chemicals shouldn't be in there, because not everybody's allergic. But people who are allergic to these ingredients deserve to know that they're in there so they can avoid them. These are just some stats on the healthcare costs and the cost of absenteeism from exposure to toxic chemicals in cleaning products. This asthma one, the second one on here, I mean, asthma is it's increasing really, really rapidly in the United States at a really high pace. It's estimated that over 20 million people now have asthma and more than 6 million children have asthma. And again, a lot of that is related to the chemicals that we're being exposed to. This environmentally related disease one, it compounds the cost of state healthcare costs, but also productivity loss related to absenteeism. And it's not just from chemicals in cleaners, it's from childhood asthma, neurodevelopmental disorders, stuff like that. But again, things that are related to chemicals in cleaning products. So, okay, so let's get back to these problems, because then we can talk about how to actually fix them. And I promise we're going to get to safer options. I'm not just going to scare the hell out of you and then not tell you what to do. So when we started our Safe Cleaning Products Initiative in 2007, nobody was disclosing ingredients, none of the companies. In fact, we sent a letter so we picked 5 targets, top cleaning product companies. Procter & Gamble was one of them. And when we released our report, we sent letters to these guys saying, hey, what do you think about disclosing some ingredients in your cleaning products? Procter & Gamble sent us a coupon for dog food in return, which we posted on our website, and then they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll respond to your letter. But so that's how far we've come from P&G giving us a coupon for dog food to now we're actually at the table with them and discussing things with them. And hopefully they're really afraid of us is what I'm going for. So now, in, 2012, most major companies are actually disclosing most ingredients on websites. In 2008, part of what sort of led to this was after we released a report called the Dirt on Cleaning Product Companies, and it rated those top 5 companies on their use and disclosure of toxic chemicals. The industry sort of freaked out and said, okay, well, we'll start this voluntary policy where we'll say some companies, you can disclose if you want, you can disclose this way and this way and this way, and you don't have to disclose these things. So there were all these problems with this voluntary initiative, the first one being that it was voluntary and nobody was actually following it. And so it's actually, they've updated it over the last few years based on some of these companies really wanting to respond to consumers' right to know. So over the last few years, I mean, people have just been demanding this left and right. We deserve to know what's in our cleaning products. And so companies, starting with SC Johnson, actually in 2009 said, we'll start disclosing ingredients. So the industry sort of hurried to keep up. So right now, it still is lacking. I mean, it's still, you can see that there's inconsistency in how you'll actually look up the ingredients in your cleaning products. This fragrance palette. So fragrance. How many of you in here ever have reactions to fragrance? Whether it's, allergic, headache, anything. So fragrance allergies and our reactions to fragrance are really on the rise. And I don't know how many of you have also noticed certain restaurants now, certain stores have scents that they put out, a particular scent, because they want you to associate it with that place. And these are so toxic, and we'll get into why in a little bit. So fragrance actually remains one of the last bastions of secrecy in cleaning products. And part of that is because companies are feeding us this jargon. So there's fragrance houses that make the fragrance for the companies, and they're feeding us this jargon that this is the last thing that makes their product unique, is this fragrance. This is the last thing. And if we disclose all these ingredients, then our products are going to be counterfeited, they're going to be pirated. You know, these products in China are going to be sold for so much cheaper than ours. Guess what? They have all of the technology to reverse engineer each other's products, and they know exactly what's in there. And we know that because we have allies in the industry who have told us that. So this really is just the last thing that we were trying to break down. But this is the most unbelievable piece of disclosure that the industry has come up with that is so useless to everybody in this room, is a link to a fragrance palette of ingredients. And this is a master list of the ingredients used in every single product, right? And it's not associated with any single product. So they're like, hey, consumers, check this out. We just released this list of 1,000 chemicals that we use in products in our fragrance, and now you're going to feel better about it. And you're like, there's like 7 carcinogens on this list, and I have no idea what product it's in. How is this useful? So that's one of the reasons why this is just completely ridiculous, and we're working to change that. So one of the reasons we are is that we're working with Representative Israel and Senator Franken's office on this piece of federal legislation that we've been working on for quite a while now. And this is what ideally we would like to see, is just like every other product on the market, well, almost every other product on the market, that it would be directly on the label. You pick it up and it says exactly what's in there, fragrance ingredients, contaminants, anything like that. And the industry comes back with this argument saying, there's no way, that we can ever fit that list of ingredients on our bottle. We have all of these warnings that are required, and well, it's just going to be too busy. And what we come back with and say, hey, check out this tube of lipstick that has every single ingredient listed on it. We're pretty sure that you can fit it on a cleaning product label. So this also will apply to institutional cleaners. Right now, institutional cleaners have even less disclosure than consumer product cleaners do. So this would be huge, huge. Senator Franken is introducing his before the session ends, and Representative Israel has already introduced his. At the end here, I can pull up our action alert. I was just laughing about this. I can pull up our action alert so that you can ask our representative to support it, but I actually feel like there's no way in hell that Rehberg would support this. So, we could bring it up anyway, and it would be fun to tell him to support it. So these are some of the toxic chemicals that we're talking about, and a lot of these are definitely in institutional cleaners. Quats are disinfectant chemicals. They're called quats for short. They're linked to asthma and fertility problems like low birth weight. And you'll also find these in some consumer cleaners like Clorox wipes, Lysol disinfectant, stuff like that. You'll actually find these on the label because they're a disinfectant chemical. They're required to be labeled. So this actually is one that you can look out for, because I know you'll remember that, I'm sure. Phthalates, I guarantee that a lot of people in here have heard of phthalates. Here's what makes phthalates scary. They actually are not part of the scent that makes up a fragrance. They're a fragrance ingredient, but they don't add to the scent. They're what makes that scent linger in the air or on your skin. And so they're designed to keep chemicals there, essentially. And they're linked to these scary health problems. When we talk about reproductive harm in baby boys, we're talking about things like undescended testicles, low fertility, stuff like that. Synthetic musks, these are also, this is why fragrance ingredients are scary. This is also a fragrance ingredient, and this one, it does contribute to the scent. And a lot of companies have actually gotten out of using musks. SC Johnson, who makes Glade, and Procter & Gamble, who makes Febreze, they still use musks. Incidentally, P&G still uses phthalates too. They're one of the only companies that still admits to using phthalates, and they're one of the biggest consumer product companies in the world. They should not be using that.
Which one?
They use phthalates, P&G. Oh, Procter & Gamble, and they make things like Febreze and Tide. We could look up a bunch. They make a lot of products. So synthetic musks, imagine this. So you have a fragrance, and it contains phthalates and synthetic musks, like Febreze probably does. And that synthetic musk goes in and it breaks down your cell's defenses against other toxic exposures, like the phthalate. Well, the phthalate is designed to stay on your skin, right? So does that give it a little more time to actually get into your cell? I'm just definitely theorizing here, but these are things that the industry should definitely be thinking of when we're talking about the design of a fragrance. I feel like all of you guys have heard of triclosan. Incidentally, Procter & Gamble is also the only company we work with that still uses triclosan. It's in Joy and Dawn. Don't buy Joy and Dawn. Okay, so I was getting into the link here between disclosure and toxic chemicals. So in November, we released our first product testing report where we tested 20 top cleaning products for undisclosed toxic chemicals that wouldn't appear on any website, any label. And what we found was really scary, that all of these companies who'd even admitted, who'd said that they weren't using phthalates anymore, for instance, Simple Green, Naturals, in their Naturals line we found phthalates. We found 1,4-dioxane, which is linked to cancer. And SC Johnson, who said they make Glade, they said they weren't using phthalates anymore, and we found high levels of this certain phthalate in there that we've since called them on, and they're reformulating it. So that's why disclosure is so big, because if we know what's in there, we can say take that out, and we can mobilize all of these consumers to say we're not going to buy this until you take that out. The two are so linked. Toluene, that's a super scary chemical. It says pregnancy complications. That's essentially miscarriages. All these fragrance air fresheners like Airwick, I'm sorry, I'm totally in the way, like Airwick and Glade, Febreze, they had these high levels of allergens, but they weren't disclosed anywhere. So if you were allergic to any of these chemicals, you'd have no idea. What was even more amazing was that these cleaners that were labeled fragrance-free had levels of allergens in them, and we know that these chemicals that are allergens are only used in fragrance products. So what are they doing in there? So that really just highlights the need for, I think that, so what, you don't know exactly what's in there. Why does it make a difference? This is why we need disclosure, for sure. Yay, safer options, finally. So I know that a lot of this, it's not an easy answer, unfortunately, because it still is really difficult to pick up one product and say we know that this is safe. But these are just some of the options. And I should put it out there that Women's Voices for the Earth does not actually endorse any products whatsoever in any industry, any sector. And especially with cleaning products, and part of the reason is because we just don't know what's in there. But some ingredients, I swear we're still not endorsing these, but some companies actually are disclosing all ingredients. 7th Generation is one of them. Cleanwell is another one. And Cleanwell actually is interesting because they're partnering with cleaning product companies to give an alternative to the ammonium quaternary compounds that I talked about. They're using thyme oil, which is just as effective as these incredibly toxic chemicals at killing germs, and it's thyme oil. And yes, it is a little bit of an allergen. They're finding that people are allergic to it, but they're disclosing it and saying, hey, it's in here, so don't use it if you're allergic to it. So it's a viable alternative, which is really cool. Cleanwell also, if you are looking for sort of an industrial hand sanitizer, they make great hand sanitizer, and you can go to their website. I didn't actually put it on here. It's cleanwelltoday.com. and order an industrial strength size of hand sanitizer that doesn't have triclosan. It's not alcoholic. It is just this thyme oil, which is really great. This is the best I feel like we can do right now, short of endorsing, is look for Design for the Environment certified cleaners. And DFE is the best of all of the certifications because it does include an array of stakeholders who give them feedback. So this is actually, it's an EPA program, the Environmental Protection Agency program, and they've developed it with companies so that they can actually know what companies are using. And they've developed it with NGOs like Women's Voices for the Earth. We've been a really big part of developing this program, and with other scientists outside. So really great sort of stakeholder process for this. Their screening process is also the best out there right now. They look at chemicals through a screen that is sort of a combination of hazardous ingredient lists, of authoritative lists, like the lists that make up Proposition 65 in California that classifies carcinogens, mutagens, and reproductive toxins. So for example, if a company is using a chemical that's on a Proposition 65 list, it can't be certified. So they basically look for the safest ingredients in each category. And they just released sort of a safer ingredients list, which is great. And again, sometimes right now there might not be a safest alternative in a certain category because the green chemistry hasn't quite caught up yet. And the industry doesn't look at it saying, well, we just shouldn't use this, basically, until we know it's safe. So one thing I should say that I think is really, really good to know when we're talking about chemicals and we're talking about companies and the way that companies come at this and the way that they evaluate chemicals for safety is that normal people like us would come at this from an approach of saying, we know this is linked to cancer, we're not going to use it. Whereas companies come at it from a risk assessment standpoint and they say, how much of this can we use before it's going to cause cancer? Here's the problem with that, is that they don't base that on aggregate exposure, which means how do other chemicals interact with that chemical? So how does that synthetic musk that Procter & Gamble is using in Febreze interact with that phthalate, that's aggregate exposure? They don't test for that in your body. What happens there? They don't test for cumulative exposure, which means more exposures of that certain chemical. So even for, I actually asked SC Johnson, so SC Johnson recently came to Missoula to talk with us about their use of chemicals. And we said, do you test for the way that you actually recommend using your products? So if somebody is using scrubbing bubbles in the tub and somebody is using Windex on the mirror, are you testing for that cumulative exposure of that one chemical? No, they're not, which is just unbelievable. So that is sort of the problem with why we're sort of never going to get as close as we possibly could. But this certification is the best that we can get to. And the reason also is that it requires a certain amount of disclosure, so it requires some transparency of companies, but it's just as good as the voluntary initiative that I mentioned right now. So we're currently working with DFE to break down this fragrance barrier and say, why don't you just associate this ingredient with this product? I mean, it's not that hard. This is a big one, and I forgot a quotation mark on it. If there was one thing that you were going to do, this is the one that I would recommend, is to switch to products that are fragrance-free. For all of those reasons that we talked about, for the reasons of allergens, for the reasons of non-disclosure, because we know that on the International Fragrance Association list, there are chemicals that are carcinogens, mutagens, and reproductive toxins. We just don't know who's using them. So looking for products that are labeled fragrance-free is a huge, huge step. One thing to note is not to look for unscented, because it actually means something different. That means that there are chemicals in there that mask the scent. So look for fragrance-free. Our partners at the Environmental Working Group just released a guide to healthy cleaning. If any of you know of Skin Deep, it's very similar to the Skin Deep database. This was a gigantic undertaking, and we're so glad that they did it. It unfortunately has a few problems with it, but you can look up your favorite cleaner, and they rate it on an A to F basis, and they sort of tell you why. Unfortunately, I think they had a lot of outdated information, you know, because there's like 10 of them trying to put together thousands of cleaners into this database. But what's a little bit frustrating about it is that companies like 7th Generation or companies like Method got some Fs on their products, and these companies are the ones trying to do good things, and it may be because it's outdated information. So it's a really good database, but don't get frustrated if products that you like to use may have an F and it's like EcoVer or something like that. I mean, definitely take it with a grain of salt right now, but it's huge for disclosure, because all of these companies are like, we have to get a better score, we have to disclose, because they all got dinged for not disclosing. So huge tool for disclosure. But I have that on my next slide for what the URL for that is. Really great resource, despite all of my disclaimers. This last one is really only feasible if you are small, or if you have a large enough staff that wants to get together and make safer cleaners. But we've actually had some of the local schools do this. We have had some local businesses do this, where we have on our website several green cleaning recipes. And we're talking just things like vinegar and baking soda. And studies show that vinegar is actually 99.9% as effective as bleach at killing germs like E. coli. So hugely effective, super cheap. They're so much cheaper than cleaning products, commercial cleaning products would be. And of course, they're really safe. So this really only works if you are willing to have a green cleaning party with your staff, or you have a small enough facility that you can make a big batch of this stuff, and it works. It's not really feasible for larger things. But so these are, you can find some of our reports on our website if you want to know more. You can find, oh, awesome that you guys can't read that at all. So our website is womensvoices.org on the bottom there. And our green cleaning recipes are right there on the homepage right now, actually. The DFE certified cleaners, it's epa.gov/DFE, if you want to look that up. Yeah, epa.gov/DFE. And they have a list of companies on their website that are certified, both institutional and household, which is great. So you can sort of pick from those. So the last thing I want to say before we open it up for questions is shameless self-promotion of my organization. We're having an event tomorrow night at the Missoula Winery. We're showing a film called Unacceptable Levels that will get into all of this stuff on a deeper and much more sexy basis than I just talked about, because I feel like all of your eyes are just glazing over right now. We'll have a silent auction, and we're having our first awards in Women and the Environment, which somebody in this room is winning an award, which is super exciting. You guys can all guess who that might be. So buy tickets on our website if you are interested in coming to our event tomorrow night. I am going to pass this around right now. If you are interested in getting on our email list, where you get lots of fun resources and sort of get to learn a little bit more about what we do and actually take action for fixing this problem, then please sign that. And I think that that is it. So thank you all so much for listening. I know that was quite a lot of information.
Our shot series is that the speaker's supposed to keep the presentation nice and short.
Oops.
So that you guys, no, you did great.
Okay.
So that you guys have a chance for plenty of Q&A. The idea is that you get to come and get your specific questions addressed if they weren't already dealt with. Cassidy did a great job getting us through a huge amount of information in a short time, but now it's your chance to ask whatever you need to know. So, Claudia?
Yeah.
What about toothpaste?
So toothpaste can have, it depends on the toothpaste, but some toothpastes actually contain triclosan. I never say that right, Beth. Do you say triclosan or triclosan? Triclosan. And so that is something to look for. It'll actually be on the label though, because it's a registered pesticide. So it'll be on the label. You'll be able to see it. Triclosan, so Triclosan. And one resource I actually didn't put up here that is a phenomenal resource by EWG, it's called the Skin Deep Database. If you are interested in chemicals in your personal care products, it is a phenomenal resource to look up what you're using right now, and it comes with a hazard rating from 1 to 10, so it's actually a little more in-depth than the cleaning product database. It's really great, so take a look at that for sure. Yeah.
Do you have these slides that you just showed us on your posted on your website?
I don't, but I could send it. Did everybody sign in with email? Because I could send it. Or I could send it to Susan and she can send it to you. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a sign in over here that has a space for email if you're not already on our email list. But if you specifically want this, I won't send it out to our generic email list probably. So if you specifically want this, make a note on the same before you go.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, over here.
I imagine the same goes for scented candles.
Scented candles, that's a really good, it's a really good, I'm glad you brought that up. This is, I think, a route of exposure that's really underlooked. Scented candles not only have the scent in there, which can have some toxic chemicals in them, they also have VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which are also really harmful to your health. And so you want to look for beeswax or paraffin wax candles, or just unscented in general. Unscented candles that aren't beeswax or paraffin or soy also can tend to have VOCs. So again, yeah, the beeswax, the paraffin wax, or the soy candles are the good way to go. That's a really great question.
They also produce carbon monoxide, don't they?
Oh, I don't know about that. It's a good question. Yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense. Yes, indoor air quality, yeah. Yeah.
So would you say as you eliminate the chemicals in your cleaning and your personal care, which one would you say takes priority?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You have to replace everything.
Oh my God, that's such a great question. So thank you for bringing that up, because this, like I said, can be so overwhelming, especially if you, as you know, the average person, are also trying to tell your friends about it. Your friends are just like, what do you want me to do? So my number one tip, if you're going to take one step, is to start reducing your use of any fragrance product. You know, and it doesn't mean totally eliminate your use of fragrance products, but you know, if you're right now, if you're using a shampoo, a conditioner, a lotion, a perfume, God, and everything now is scented, right? Toilet paper is scented, everything is. If you're using a cleaner that has fragrance in it, look for fragrance-free, or if you don't think that you're allergic to some things, look for fragrance with essential oils. And it'll say that on personal care products, fragrance with essential oils. So that's my number one tip if you were going to take one step. The other thing that I always tell people is that, you know, you pick your battles. My favorite hair product has parabens in it. Parabens are a preservative and they're linked to breast cancer. I still use it. And you know why I use it? Because my shampoo and my conditioner and my leave-in conditioner are safe. But I pick my battles and I say, you know what, this is my favorite hair product and I can't do without it and I'm gonna use it. And so you don't feel guilty about it, basically. And as you sort of go through a certain product after one product is done, and maybe you looked it up in the Skin Deep database and freaked out, that's when you look for another one, is after it's done, you know? And so it's a really slow process, and you pick your battles and you celebrate every step that you take, and you don't feel guilty about anything. So, yeah.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about policy making and this Prop 65 in California.
Yeah.
Is it being attacked at a federal regulatory level or state by state, or what's the approach?
That's a great question. So we as an organization and we as an environmental health community, a national community, are working on a few different things right now. State level, California has the most restrictive laws on toxic chemicals to date, which is great. Proposition 65, it doesn't say that you can't use these chemicals, but it requires companies to put a warning label on it, right? Which is a good enough impetus for people to reformulate their products because they don't want a warning label that says this product contains a carcinogen. And they also have a great Safe Cosmetics Act. But so on the federal level, what we're doing And it's a slow process. But so, and just disclosure on just the cleaning product end, we are working on that, and we're the lead organization on that. And we've been working with the trade associations that represent cleaning product companies to come to some viable agreement so that they won't block it, because the chemical industry and all of these sort of industrial sectors have more lobbying money than we're ever going to come up with, right? And so we have to come to some agreement if we're ever going to pass anything in this Congress or any Congress in the foreseeable future. And so we work on crafting the actual language of the legislation, and then we work on coming to an agreement with the stakeholders involved so that it can actually go somewhere. We're working on the Safe Cosmetics Act. We're part of this campaign for safe cosmetics, and we're also part of the National Healthy Nail and Beauty Salon Alliance. Cosmetics regulation hasn't been updated in 70 years or something. It's still totally illegal to put a carcinogen in your moisturizer, right? I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Brazilian blowout. This is my favorite example for why we need to update this. So salon products are even worse than personal care products. They don't have to be labeled. And there's this brand new hair straightening, smoothing treatment out there that all the movie stars use, and it straightens your hair for 3 to 6 months at a time. And this stylist took these products into Oregon Health and Sciences University and said, hey, every time I give this, I get these nosebleeds, I'm coughing, I get these headaches, I have these respiratory problems I never had before. This product is labeled formaldehyde free, can you test it? This product came back with 10 to 12% formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen. And we don't say that very often about a chemical, that this is known to cause cancer. We never say that. And there's 10 to 12% of this chemical in there. And this is why our cosmetics laws are broken, is because the FDA, which regulates cosmetics and food and all of that, it doesn't have the authority to take that product off the market. It can't say, well, you're done. Just unbelievable. And so that's one thing we're working on with the Safe Cosmetics Act, is to give the FDA the authority it needs to actually regulate these products. So that's the Safe Cosmetics Act. We're working on the Safe Chemicals Act, which would actually require that we test chemicals for safety before we put them in products we use every day. And that is also has this really great provision in it that chemicals have to be safe for vulnerable populations. And that means pregnant women, children, and workers. So if it's not safe for a child to be around, then it shouldn't be in there. That moved farther than it's ever moved this year. It actually passed out of committee, and Montana is huge in passing this legislation. We're not huge in passing anything, right? I mean, we're Montana, whatever. We have one representative. We were huge in passing this because Senator Baucus sits at the head of the subcommittee that it had to pass through to actually make it to the Senate floor, and we got his co-sponsorship at the very last minute because all of these women asked him to co-sponsor it. And we're such a small state that anytime you raise your voice on policy here, your senators and your representative listen to you. I mean, I remember listening to Tracy Stone Manning a few years ago working on Tester's campaign, and she said, we get 8 calls on a subject in an office, and we think that's massive, right? So your voice matters so much, even in this national policy. It's just huge. So that moved out of the committee. It's not going to make it to the Senate floor before the election because there's other things that unfortunately have to be voted on. So we'll be working on that again next year. And that's why we work with companies too, because the policy is so slow. It's so slow. So it's just so much faster to work with companies to just reformulate. I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded answer. And I just want to underscore again, please take action anytime somebody sends you something that you care about and you think that it doesn't matter. It is huge, especially in our small state. And Senator Baucus actually has quite a lot of pull in the Senate, tons of pull. So always take action if it matters to you. Yeah?
One time they talked about banning chlorine. Have you heard any more about that?
I haven't heard any more about that. Was it for specific use, you think?
I thought across the board. I mean, we use it
Huh.
everywhere.
Interesting. No, I don't. I can actually ask if you're interested in that. I can ask our Director of Science and Research about that. I should write that down. Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Does anyone do any work with retailers?
Yeah, we do. With the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, we actually are releasing in November a retailer report card on certain brands that they're carrying and their store brands as well. So with Walmart, CVS, Walgreens. Jamie and I, actually my coworker Jamie, she's our Director of Policy, we just recently went to all of these stores and we're like taking photos of things and writing stuff down. And we were very sneaky about it because the last time we did this, we at one point had this X-ray gun that tested things for certain toxic chemicals for heavy metals. And we were in Walmart and we were testing, we were like putting things on the floor and like shooting this giant gun at them, and we were asked to leave. So we got a little smarter about that. But yeah, so we work with retailers a lot, and I hate to say it because Walmart is just, I mean, you guys all know, but Walmart, because it has such a corner on the market, is a huge driver of the marketplace, huge driver. So they recently banned all PBDEs, which is a class of toxic flame retardants, in all of their products. Massive, that was massive. They, I think, are working on some sort of green cleaning policy, but it's not, it's not that stringent. Whole Foods has a phenomenal green cleaning policy. If we ever get a Whole Foods here, they won't allow cleaners in their store that don't meet a certain level of safety. But so yeah, we do work with retailers, and it is. I mean, I hate working with Walmart, but it's a fast driver. So yeah.
Sorry, how about commercial chemical supply companies?
Yeah, we don't work with them as much, just because it's not as big a route of exposure to women. So, but our colleagues, we're part of the Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families campaign, which is this giant coalition. I mean, you guys talk about needing to be inspired. If you feel overwhelmed, check out this huge coalition that we're a part of. You can actually like them on Facebook. It is just, it's moms and doctors and organizations and millions of people who support the fact that we actually need safer chemicals. So some of the experts there work with a lot of the chemical manufacturers. And, I guess in one sense we do, because Procter & Gamble is so gigantic, they actually manufacture some of their own chemicals. And they had sort of started to come to the table to talk about the Safe Chemicals Act, but the American Chemistry Council, which is the lobbying group for the entire chemical industry, sort of pushed them out, which was really sad. So it's tough to get into that sector. It's definitely tough. And that's where, I mean, that's huge to be able to just work from the source, right? But again, I mean, you have like a Procter & Gamble, for instance, who is probably outsourcing a lot of their chemicals, and you get a giant Procter & Gamble telling a fragrance house, for example, like, I don't want you to use this chemical, and that entire fragrance house will change because of that contract. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses. Yeah. Yeah.
What about hot tubs?
Ooh, I don't know anything about hot tubs. You guys are testing me. That's good. That is a good question, because that's a very good question, because a lot of chemicals are actually triggered. For example, BPA that we were talking about earlier, bisphenol A, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this. It's a plastic softener, and it's also a preservative. It's found in a lot of plastics, a lot of things like your plastic cookware. It's found in a lot of things like water bottles, tin cans, but it is actually activated by high heat or extreme cold. And so that's another top tip. I'm just getting into all these random things for you guys, but never microwave plastic, because it allows the BPA to leach out. Or don't put your water bottle in the freezer unless it's BPA free, because that allows it to leach out. So that's a good question about hot tubs, definitely. Yeah, please do. Yeah, that would be great. I'll ask our director of science. Yeah.
So then I was reading in prevention, and they said the next great BPA is the BPS.
That's a really great question. So we are finding that a lot of companies are touting the fact that they've taken BPA out of their products. For example, Campbell's just said that they were taking it out of all of their soup cans. They won't tell us what they're using instead. And so we're finding that it's another class of bisphenol, which means that it's, it has, and I think it has even less safety data. Correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, if you know about this, but it has even less safety data than BPA has. Not all companies are doing this, but that's, again, why we need this chemical policy reform, because we just have to say, listen, if this isn't safe to begin with, why are you putting it in your product? Or why are you not even telling us what are some of the health and safety studies on this chemical? So that's a really good question. And so to avoid plastic altogether, not altogether, but to start avoiding certain kinds of plastic is a really good way to go. I have these Pyrex containers for leftovers, going with a clean canteen water bottle as opposed to even a Nalgene, because who knows, Nalgene may be using BPS, I don't know. So sort of starting to try to avoid that is a good way to go. Yeah.
What about using microwaves, even with glass? Just use the use of microwaves.
So far, I mean, I have not heard as much on that, so that might be another good question to ask my director of science. But with glass, as far as I know, if the glass is made correctly, then it shouldn't be leaching any toxics into your food.
I understand that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the actual microwave use. That's why I totally sidestepped that question. You noticed. But if you were interested in that, you should put that by your email, and I'll ask our director of science. And a lot of you may actually know Alex Scranton. She used to live here. She's our director of science and research. She's pretty awesome. So she knows all the answers to questions that I don't.
I don't think what her maiden name was.
Gorman. Yeah.
Most people
Yeah,
know her as
Alexander
Alex.
Gorman. Yeah. And I would say that if this is something that you're interested in, go on our website. We have some really, really easy resources. I should have actually brought it. We have this 10 steps to reduce exposure, which is 10 easy things to do at home to take chemicals out of your life. We have this this fact sheet called 15 Toxic Trespassers, and it labels our 15 top chemicals and what they're in and how to avoid it. So go check out our website. Go take a look. Email me. My email is here. I'm, our outreach manager, so I really like talking to people, so feel free to email me anytime.
Any other questions? All right. Nice job.
Thank you.
I just have one other thing to mention. Our next event is going to be October 17th, when our 8th annual Sustainability Awards will happen. 5:30 here for the refreshments again, 6 o'clock for the presentation. We always have our award winners form a panel to let you know what their sustainability efforts are and give you a chance to ask them how they went about doing what they did. We just tallied the results. I can't tell you, but it's pretty exciting. So anyway, October 17th here at the Loft. We'd love to see you for the awards ceremony. And we also have a Scribe Towards Sustainability workshop for those of you who are business folks coming up on November 9th. It's from 12 to 4 at Office Solutions and Services, and you do need to RSVP, so you can chat with me if you'd like to do that, or those watching online can go to info@sustainablebusinesscouncil.org and let me know if you want to come to the workshop. Thanks for joining us here. We're glad to have you all, and we hope you'll join us again in the future. Sign in and fill out our questionnaire on your way out here, please. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.